Welcome to Our Next Existence by Katie and the Chorus. I'm Katie, former technology strategist turned reluctant spiritual medium, and I channel messages from the Chorus, a group of beings just beyond our sensory perceptions who are loving, expansive, and who greatly enjoy sharing their perspective of us. Join us each week as we share and discuss their ideas about humanity's existence, purpose, and future. Concepts you can draw from to accelerate your path, expand your perceptions, and ultimately step into the flow of the universe and your life. Welcome back, everybody. For those of us who have been following along weekly, you know that there's been a bit of a space between this episode and the last. A lot's been happening lately, potentially in your lives too. Firstly, the Chorus and I did want to announce that the book is getting really close to publication. And also, I did want to give you an update because for those of you who have been following along, you know that this sort of journey that I've been on, accepting sort of this and what's been happening and what I'm doing, has been a little bumpy. And there was a part of me that wanted to stay in the closet forever. But since starting the podcast and writing the book, I have been taking many baby steps in terms of embracing this a little more. And I wanted to update you all that I have actually started telling people about this. I have run into some friends, some that I haven't seen in years. And I will be honest, it hasn't exactly gone gracefully. The first time I ran into a friend of mine that I hadn't seen in 3 years, I think, or 4 years. And she was talking very animatedly about everything that was going on for her. And then she asked me, "So, what's been going on with you?" And I kind of like laughed nervously, like in jittery, like a hyena with caffeine jitters, just like a And then she started talking about something else again. And then so she asked me again a little later in the conversation. And then she asked me again a little later in the conversation. So every time I was just like this awkward laugh. And so finally I spit it out and I sort of like, well, and it was long and drawn out about the spiritual things have happened. It was super vague, not at all upfront, but I finally came around to it. She was super supportive. The next time someone asked me what I had been up to the last few years, I got this weird hitch in one of my shoulders and it sort of started inching up towards my ear. I sort of started making these weird facial contortions. And so this other woman was asking me, "So, what have you been up to the last few years?" And I sort of, like tucked into my shoulder and like grimaced so much so that she actually took a step backwards and then kind of laughed and was like, "Do I want to know what happened?" Oh, it's just brutal. Self acceptance is not always a smooth path. But it has gotten easier and easier. And each time I have to make a conscious choice to let something out, to let it be true, because it is true for me, and to feel a comfort and an assurance in expressing myself and who I am and maybe what my story is. And just recently, someone asked me, "What have you been up to the last few years?" And do you know what I was able to say? I was able to say it all in less than a handful of words. Got sick, had a spiritual awakening, started receiving messages, wrote it down into a book, and now I've got a podcast. You'll get there. What at one time may have felt so consuming and emotionally overwhelming, one day you will be able to sum up in a half dozen words and then continue on with talking about all the other things that are then manifesting in your life. And the Chorus and I are cheering you on every step of the way. In today's episode, the chorus talks about energy in a new way and in what could be construed as a more specific way. But if you listen carefully, you might find that what they're doing is opening a door. They are allowing in more and different perspectives on this sort of bucket term of energy that we are just stepping into and starting to explore what it means and what it is. Oh, one more thing, almost forgot. I have a cold during the first part of this episode. So, trigger alert if that you are sensitive to, just a heads up, but I think it'll be worth it. And it does get better. In the first part of the episode, you'll hear directly from the chorus themselves, and then afterwards, we will discuss. Enjoy their energy. Perhaps by now, beloved ones, you are beginning to understand our meaning of trust in new ways. Trust for a human has a lot to do with your mental projections, with the ideas that you have about how you deem something to be safe prior to your experience of it. Trust is affected greatly by your idea of a linear timeline. As you trust another and move forward in the actions of experiencing something with that other, you evaluate their behavior. You determine whether or not it is preferred. And then your beliefs in trust about them grow. When you first began listening to these messages, you did not yet have a mental projection about us, about what we are, about how all of this works. And now, perhaps many hours into listening to these episodes, you have begun to develop ideas about who we are and what potentially some of us believe and whether or not we are trustworthy. What is the difference for a human between a brand new experience in which there is nothing for you yet to judge, when it is perhaps so new that you cannot even recall to yourself instances of similar kind in which you may draw an approximate judgment from, versus experiences that seem somewhat familiar to you, that have an aspect of already being deemed to be something before that experience has even yet occurred. The difference we would suggest is the existence of that frequency on your frequencies of the five senses. Allow us to explain. There are parts of you that are energetically connected right now. And though your kind is still awakening to how these function, to how they have been there somewhere in the background all along, they are, in essence, a part of you, a functioning part of you. These, today, your kind might call tools that perceive different frequencies than the frequencies of the five senses. And this is true. However, from our vantage point, energy constantly moves across all spectra to which a consciousness is expanded. Therefore, it would be equally valid to say that as you perceive energy move across what you are able to perceive, you will find that first it may show up as just a very subtle sensation, a very subtle knowing, as it is detected by your energetic tools. And then as it continues to move across your conscious awareness, you may find that it becomes an idea. And then you may find that it becomes a feeling. And then you may find that it manifests somehow in your conversations with others, in the environment around you. Therefore, this word frequency is at once so broad and so vast that it might be difficult for a human to draw additional meanings from this singular word. Therefore, we would like to suggest a new concept. That is, that there are energies of creation and also that there are energies of you, of your consciousness, of your unique being that you are. Energies of self, energetic capacities of self, are often what we are alluding to when we discuss your energetic tools. These things are created and generated by you, by your existence, by your infinite connection to all of creation. However, what is it that you come into contact with? What are these infinite number of rendezvous with others' energy, with the energy of other beings, of other places, of other times? These are not necessarily of you from your vantage point and from many of ours. Rather, that there are things out there in creation with which you may interact, which you may perceive, and these are the energies of creation. Beloved ones, as you move forward into a broader awareness of your own energetic tools, of the frequencies of who and what you are and are becoming, you will find that there is often a corollary response from creation. That as you discover more about yourself, you witness in creation a reflection of those things, and you become more aware of all that is around you as well. These are not, we would suggest, things that you will know in advance. These are not thinking thoughts yet. By virtue of your being able to perceive them with energetic tools, they are, you could say, at the furthest reaches of the current expansiveness of your consciousnesses. Thus, you will not yet have a thought about what these are, what these things and experiences can be. They will, for a time, surprise you. But through the experiences of those surprises, you will find that you are more clearly able to see these energetic aspects of yourself, and that there really was no surprise. For in order to perceive those other things, you first had to expand into those frequencies of yourself. We love you infinitely. And from our vantage points, where we can see more of the energetic beings that you are, we wish to express to you how beautiful of beings you are. First grader cold, day 3. It's not coronavirus as far as we know. All the tests came back negative. I had serious mixed feelings about recording this because I am and have been the kind of person that as soon as I hear somebody else coughing or sneezing or blowing their nose or anything, I almost immediately start to feel like I'm congested, like just a little bit, just a twinge. The chorus told me, however, that I should go ahead and record this episode because it has purpose. In fact, some of them responded with a sort of giddy enthusiasm, which is usually a representation that something helpful is about to be manifested on our wavelengths. So here I am. And here you are. And I promise to edit out all major coughing, sneezing, or nose blowing. It is timely because we're here on episode 20 and we spent a lot of time talking about our beliefs and consciousness as well as emotions, a wide variety of human emotions and how those are created energetically here and how we are becoming aware of them, particularly as we are awakening. But we haven't spent a whole lot of time on the human body, this instrument that we have that we perceive here through which we experience all of this. To a human, our body is often perceived to be us. Our perception of ourselves is largely driven by the physical aspects of ourselves in this reality. We tend to often identify with the thing that we see in the mirror as or more often than perhaps manifestations that we experience with that body. For example, a human will often define themselves based on what they've lived in their life, all of which they've experienced with the body. But a human will also feel a strong attachment to the perception of what they are via the way that body is perceived. So when we look in the mirror and we see hair and eyes and whatever, and facial expressions, we have a correspondent sense of self, you could say. Our relationship to our own instruments is one that sort of reinforces the limitation of being able to see ourselves in any other way, or perhaps in a way that extends beyond the physical body. Eastern philosophy has been talking about this for a few thousand years now, in the sense that they have caught on to the idea of reincarnation and that there is an entity that exists beyond the physical body itself. And moreover, they encourage practices of non attachment that give a human a chance to envision or connect with what they might be beyond the physical body. So you sit and you meditate and you try and get a feel for the light inside of you, the person that you are, that is more than your face, your posture, your weight, etc. Western religions, I guess as you could classically call them, have also sort of supported this idea in the sense that there's life after death. So there is a soul, there is a part of you that extends beyond the human body. I would say that today, the majority of these concepts are pretty well known. They seem to be pretty resonant across our mass consciousness, across our group consensus, I should say. So when I encountered the chorus, I sort of had these ideas in mind while also still being relatively attached to my physical form. I mean, I was quite concerned about my illness at the time that I encountered them. I was very preoccupied with how my format looked. I took care in how I dressed it. I was aware of how it moved throughout the day and feeding it and et cetera, et cetera. Like most humans, you're sort of like alive in your body. But I also understood that there is a spirit, there is a soul, there is a life inside of me that extends beyond this physical body. And so when I started talking to them about things that I was struggling with, a lot of it centered from this origin point of my issues, which was I was sick and I didn't know what else to do about it. I didn't know why I was sick. Nobody knew why I was sick. All the doctors were baffled. And I was tired of being given all sorts of medications when no one really understood what was going on in my body. And I think mostly I was the most frustrated that we have these things that are ours. We have these things that are bodies that are us, that are so intricately tied to how we live and do everything here, and that you couldn't know what was going on with it was just extraordinarily frustrating to me. And I know many of you have felt this way too. Like, how preposterous is it that we can't see our insides? Like, we can't see what's actually happening with our own bodies. In fact, I started looking into buying my own medical equipment for my house so that I could do my own imaging or whatever, because I was tired of relying on a doctor and appointments and other people in order to get the pictures or the lab results or things that I wanted. Turns out they're all prohibitively expensive. So instead, I became obsessed with this camera that you can put inside of your ear that I found on Amazon. But anyway, now the chorus at times may come across as having an insufficient bedside manner, I should say. They tend to just deliver it as they see it. And that can oftentimes trigger a lot of our beliefs in terms of limitation because they will give you very directly a very expansive perspective. They don't they don't hold back. They are just what they are. And oftentimes it may not be what our belief systems can catch completely. We sense that there's some part of it that is helpful and is expansive, but then there's also some part of us that just deepens our frustration. Maybe you felt some of this in previous episodes. So when I started talking to them, and I started talking to them, of course, about human illness, they sort of started from the standpoint of, well, you created it. And at the time, I responded with a sort of big F you because, I was aware enough of energy and manifestation and the energetic universe and whatever. So I had a sense that I had played a part in however I had attracted this. And so I took that as sort of just a reinstatement of an understanding I already had and was quite frustrated that I hadn't moved beyond. When in actuality, they were kicking off a new level of explanation that I had not anticipated. So they said, well, you created this illness. And I said, yeah, whatever. Screw you. I know I did. I brought it on myself. But why do we get sick? And why do we bring this on ourselves? If we all understand that we're energetic, if we all understand that we have some degree of control over the experiences that we have here, then why are we all sick? There are so many of us who are sick. And this was pre-pandemic, I might add. And in their very loving, infinitely loving, no hesitation loving way, they continued to explain things to me. And it didn't often have anything to do with the human body. It did peripherally, but they started to describe to me everything we've discussed in the last 19 episodes and then some about our belief systems, about what we came here to resonate with, about the experience of limitation, about the degree that our consciousness has overlapped with our mind, with our belief systems. And through those descriptions, they began to sort of formulate concepts about the idea of a mind body instrument. From their vantage point, there is no difference between the beliefs that we hold and the physical instrument, the body, that we experience this reality through. From their standpoint, consciousness is that larger energetic thing. It's us, it's the true us. Our consciousness overlapped with these frequencies of disallowance through which we started to create beliefs. The beliefs, being the first manifestations of our resonance with these frequencies, are what began to create what we would call the physical experience of this reality. So, as usual, a human from this perspective tends to view things first from what happens on the five senses wavelengths. So, we look at our body first and expand our understandings from there. The chorus, being more expanded and on broader frequencies, looks to the broadest parts of what we are for understanding and moves from that vantage point. And so, from where they stand, they see first and foremost our consciousnesses, what we are. And then they see how those consciousnesses have sort of resonated and created the experience of what we would call the humanoid form. Perhaps this sheds a little bit more light on the idea that we know somehow that what we believe creates disease. I was thumbing through, in case you don't know this book, I was thumbing through Heal Your Body by Louise Hay. And she, and like many other enlightened persons of these sort of concepts, teaches the idea that there are diseases that express themselves in the body because they are rooted in a belief system that we have. And they might not even say belief, they might say trauma. They might say some sort of held resentment, some sort of unprocessed emotion. These sorts of phrases are very common in today's therapy and psychiatric circles, and in some sort of Eastern medicine type healing the physical body methodologies. We understand that there's some sort of connection between our beliefs and then disease. And the Course would agree. They say that all disease in the body is rooted in our beliefs of limitation. But it's not necessarily from their vantage point that, like, you are a human and you've got some held resentment that you got to process in order to get better, although that is true. But equally valid would be their larger perspective that the belief systems of disallowance that we created by resonance here is the foundation and the underlying construct of the humanoid form. So now you might say, wait a second, you guys are saying that I am experiencing this cold or this mysterious disease because of things that I believe? And the Course would say, yes. And many other human teachers too. And then you might be catching on to sort of a next level of what the Course is suggesting, which is, wait a second, Course, I look like this because of what I believe? And the Course would say, yes. So this casts the human form, the mind-body instrument as they view it, because the instrument and the beliefs are inextricably related. They are so connected. One is a reflection of the other, a reflection that we are able to perceive on the five senses. And so now you can start to see their perspective, where when you look at the human form, it's less about you and your identity, and it's more about what your identity, what your consciousness is up to, what it's experiencing, what it's resonant with, and what it's reflecting. One day I was looking in the mirror, and I think I was pretty sick at this time. I gained a bunch of weight. A lot of my systems were out of whack. I was having problems in a variety of areas. So, I'm looking at my mind body instrument in the mirror. And I was a little bit torn because I felt the love and the appreciation that the Chorus resonates with all the time. And I loved that feeling and that sensation. But then also, as I looked in the mirror, there were a ton of emotions that I was having that were ranging from anger and frustration to disgust and displeasure. And so I said to him, I said, I don't like this. I don't like the way I look. Why can't I be more appreciative and satisfied about how I look? And they said, well, actually, you don't really know how you look. I said, what? I mean, at that point, you sort of start to like expect what the chorus is going to say to you. And, you sort of expect them to be like, oh, you're beautiful. You'll see your beauty. I don't know, stuff like that maybe we try and say to each other when we're reaching for a higher frequency. And instead, they were like, well, that's not really what you look like. I said, what do you mean? And they said, well, what you're seeing is a reflection of your current resonance with these frequencies. You don't actually know what you look like, what your most expanded self looks like, because you can't perceive that here. And I was like, huh, not really sure what to do about the bags under my eyes right now with that answer. But okay. So, something that they started to point out then as I went through the day, and something that they even tease a little bit about in the book, is how much we all look alike. And this has been a recurrent theme for them and something that they've continued to talk about, particularly as they are helping us or reflecting to us our expansion in terms of being able to perceive more and different types of life in the universe. And so they would tease me and they would say, how much do you all look alike? And I said, well, I don't know. I mean, I guess we do sometimes, but I see differences. And they said, that's right. To you, the difference in hair color or in height or in facial features can be very noticeable. But from a greater distance, they said, you sort of all look alike. They said, how many of you have heads? How many of you have eyes? How many of you have mouths? How many of you use two legs to walk or legs at all? How many of you have to walk? And so I started to understand from their broader vantage point that if you were in touch with an infinite number of types of life in the universe and you came to planet Earth and we all had the same form, we're kind of looking a lot alike. Our biggest differences sometimes amount to different pigments in our hair strands. And we think, oh my gosh, you look so different. I love that hair color on you. And the chorus is like, uh, almost all of you have hair on some part of your body. From their perspective, this is a very good example of the way that would reflect that we are in a consensus driven reality, meaning all of us who look alike are naturally co resonant with a similar set of frequencies. Said another way, we all believe the same shit. And so, as a pack, as a group that is experiencing a similar reality, we look very much alike. And not only that, but because of the rules of the game that we came here to experience in terms of limitation, our physical formats don't really change. Now, you could say, hang on, Katie, they do change. We grow from childhood into adulthood, we deteriorate. And if you've listened to prior episodes, you know that deterioration is actually a progression through beliefs of limitation. And so that is true. We reflect to each other in sort of nuanced ways from the chorus's perspective that we are progressing through different versions of limitation. However, we are all still perceivable to each other within the game. Now, if you look at it from the chorus's perspective, where we are activating beliefs billions of times per second, that the speed of the infinite universe is almost faster than we can even contemplate from the perspective of the human mind, then you might agree that we don't really change that much. I mean, do you change your physical format billions of times per second? Are you perceptive of that number of changes? If you were sitting at a dinner table with someone and their physical format changed billions of times per second, would you, and from your mind based perspective, be able to keep up with that? I mean, from a certain vantage point, our societies would be pretty turned upside down if everyone woke up every day looking totally different. In fact, your life and your identity might be turned a little bit on its head, pun intended, if every morning you woke up and walked into your bathroom and looked in the mirror and saw a completely different physical format. So now, as we started to get into the discussion of some of these beliefs, and I started to contemplate what it would look like to change my my instrument for this game that quickly, I started to feel like a shiftiness, like an uncertainness, like that the floor was moving out from under me. And they said, "Yes, that's a good reflection of the beliefs that are activating that you're becoming conscious of in the game that shows you just how much you all are attached to, you could say, but also resonant with the idea of a physical body as the identity of you." And so, as you begin to press a little bit on the idea that that physical format could be fluid, you become conscious of all of the beliefs that drive your connection to the human body. And they said this is a really important part of awakening because as you become more aware of the energetic being that you are, your attachment, your resonance with the belief systems about the physical body will soften. And as they soften, you will feel less concerned about your body. It will be less of a preoccupation. There will be fewer sort of mind churning cycles spent on how you look, how you feel, how other people are looking at you, all of these things that go on subconsciously in the background that drive all of this interaction between our belief systems and the representation of it that we perceive on the five senses, which is the body. And the fact that so much of this is subconscious is a part of the story that we are only just awakening to. All right. Mystery Cold Day 4. Do I sound any better? Not sure that I do. I don't know. Sometimes you're like done with the cold and it's still coming out of you. You sound the worst after you are starting to feel better. All right. So, anyways, continuing on with the idea that a lot of this is subconscious. So, everything we've discussed so far, I would say, is quasi conscious. Some of the nuances of this are still coming through to us. But as a species, we're getting more and more aware. It's becoming more mainstream, it's more part of conversation that things we believe can have a physical corollary. And then we're also loosely aware that there may be more to us than meets the eye, literally, on the wavelengths of visible light, that there is potentially what some have called an energetic body, right? An extension of our five senses body that is beyond us. And so everything sort of we've talked about so far is quasi conscious, I would say, in the group consensus. But from the chorus's perspective, we are still just beginning to awaken to how our experience of this reality and our resonance with these frequencies and these beliefs truly generates our experience of the body, of the mind body instrument. One of the examples that they gave me just recently had to do with beliefs about protection and prevention. Now, we talked about these beliefs a bit in episode 12, and these constructs are pretty large quadrants, you could say, of our belief systems The idea that there are things that we need to prevent or protect ourselves from is really a quintessential part of being human. So, when we prevent and we protect, as we talked about in that episode, what we are really doing is holding something away from us at arm's length. There is an energy, there is an investment in rebuffing aspects of the universe because we believe it will damage us, destroy us, or hurt us in some way. And so, as opposed to love and infinite allowing, which is more where the chorus is, by our beliefs in the need to prevent and protect, we actually limit ourselves. We energize the idea that we could be hurt, that we could be damaged, and that we must do this thing called prevention and protection in order to assure our survivals. When in faster frequencies, you could say where the chorus is, there is no such thing as damage. There is no such thing as being vulnerable. You are infinitely supported by the infinite universe. Okay, so contemplate those belief systems for a second. And now, maybe take a guess. How does prevention and protection subconsciously express itself through the human form? Consciously, we have some good examples. We wear sunblock, we put on seatbelts. But what are some of the things that the human body does very naturally that you might consider an expression of the beliefs of prevention and protection? See, it's a podcast. So, if you just sit there and keep listening, I'm going to tell you. It's not fair. If we were sitting here face to face, I would make you take a guess, but we're not. Okay. So, a subconscious expression of prevention and protection in the humanoid form is our immune systems. The human immune system is not something that we control consciously moment by moment. This we are well aware of. There are tiny entities all over our body called white blood cells and all different kind of cells that have sort of this ongoing experience inside our body without us telling it what to do in a conscious way moment by moment. I am not sitting here as I am podcasting telling my white blood cells which part of this mystery cold to attack or break apart or rearrange or whatever it is that they're doing right now. Our beliefs in prevention and protection line up very nicely with how we understand the function and the abilities of our immune systems today. That we view these cells and their primary role as not only identifying invaders, bodies, whatever you want to call them, all foreign cells, viruses, bacteria, but that also, once it is identified, these aspects of our system do what? They protect us. They hold at arm's length these other little entities. They disassemble the viruses, they break apart the bacteria, they keep them from replicating, they destroy them. The same way we protect ourselves from invaders, we protect ourselves from people coming into our lives or our house that we find unsavory or unwanted. This same structure, this same belief is reflected within the human form as we know it today. So you might say here, hold on a second. You're saying that unconsciously, I have beliefs in prevention and protection. And because of that, my immune system works in a certain way, which is to prevent and protect me from viruses and bacteria and other things that shouldn't be in my body. And the chorus would say, yes. And another equally valid perspective would be that we only understand our bodies and our immune systems by way of the beliefs that we subconsciously hold. As we evolve in our beliefs, as our beliefs change, from the vantage point of the chorus, our experience of our physical format will also change. So now, being human, you and I could get specific here and say, well, which one is it? Is it that we just understand our immune system differently and that doesn't change, or that the way our immune system functions changes? And they would kind of say, meh, it's your experience, it's your reality, whatever you want to call it. But from the larger perspective, we basically have these options available to us as we awaken to the belief systems that we hold, like prevention and protection, and then can make different choices, different experiences of this or other realities, should you wish it. So now, by contrast, let's take a contrast of what might a humanoid form, what might an immune system look like were it operating under the resonance of different beliefs. Let's say it's a little closer to the chorus. Now, some members of the chorus are a little bit beyond belief. They don't hold these structures that we hold, but some of them do hold beliefs. They're just much more expansive than our beliefs. And so some of them are being infinitely loving, infinitely worthy, sort of never run out of gas kind of stuff. So let's pretend for a second that you held some of those beliefs. What might your immune system look like? And again, it's a podcast. So you know, and I know that I'll answer it in a second if you just hang out there. But seriously, try. Give a guess. What might your system do? Now, a good guess would be I wouldn't even need an immune system. I would just be sort of like an infinite glowing ball of energy and, wouldn't need all that. Totally valid perspective. But if you were going to look at the humanoid form today and suggest a next evolution, suggest a next step, so not crazy far off of what we are today, but definitely an evolved standpoint beyond it, what might that look like? One idea among an infinite number that you can choose from would be that the immune system, rather than preventing and protecting insurgences by other types of cells into the human body, would rather come from a standpoint of allowance and integration, where being infinitely supplied with infinite energy and ability and expansiveness, rather than those things being looked at as foreign bodies that need to be repulsed, they would be looked at as opportunities for expansion, where each new perspective, each new type of cell would be welcomed into the human body, because the human system would expand in its understandings and abilities and functions and systems for every new type of entity that it encountered. These kinds of beliefs are the beginning of what you might call human invincibility, where there is nothing anywhere in the universe that could have a counterproductive effect on the mind body instrument that we hold. Where, just like we've been talking about in all the episodes to date, when you look out into the universe at infinite choice, there is no threat. There is nothing that you need to propulse or protect yourself from. Rather, for each new perspective that you encounter, not only are you expanded in what you are able to perceive, but you become even more clear on your preference, your desires, and your path of greatest expansion. And so we would move from being a species that is constantly trying to do away with all sorts of other cells and life and perspectives and differing opinions in the universe and move towards being a species that looks forward to the encounters with all sorts of other different life because we know and embody at all levels that as we encounter those things, we are strengthened, we are expanded, we are improved. And there is nothing in the universe that could diminish us. Taken from this kind of viewpoint, then as I'm laying there with this mystery cold, rather than thinking about going to get the emergency powder out of the cabinet and wondering if we have all sorts of other medicines that help my body to kill this invader, to fight this invader, rather, I would spend more time contemplating and potentially experiencing how my system will become stronger, more adept, and more able by the miracle of this encounter with this brand new thing. And perhaps as we look at exploring beyond our home planet into other parts of the solar system or the galaxy, we wouldn't have to spend so much time building heat shields, building systems to deal with radiation, building walls and windows and air sealed pods to keep out the space, to keep out the radiation, to keep out all these other things that we fear we might encounter that our humanoid form is not prepared to deal with. Instead, you might land on a planet ready to just soak up all the viruses it has to offer, knowing that then your system will become a miracle of integrating all the strengths of those perspectives. And that never again would you fear something like radiation because you know that as your body encounters anything, it naturally adapts and integrates the best of those things into you. Victory Cold Day 9. I got a little busy on days 5 through 8. Rays of golden sunlight are shining through my clear nasal passages. All right, so where'd we leave off? So far, we've covered that from the chorus's perspective, we embody a mind body instrument where the body and the things that we believe are so closely intertwined that the one reflects the other. As such, we tend to look a lot alike from the chorus's perspective because we are co-resonant on these frequencies, on these beliefs. As we also talked about, many of these beliefs are still subconscious, but they express themselves in our body. And so as we continue to awaken, we will begin to notice or observe or become aware of things that our bodies do in new ways, such as what we discussed, the concept of the human immune system, where right now it perfectly reflects all of our beliefs of prevention and protection in sort of preventing foreign bodies from coming into our system and destroying or protecting us from the ones that do. Now, at the risk of making this sound overly simplistic, I think it's important to say that it's not that now that you're aware of how prevention and protection manifests in your body, you can simply say, well, I'm never going to wear sunscreen again, and I'm not going to wear a seatbelt. No more prevention, no more protection. I'm ready to be invincible. Because in that moment, several things are happening. The first is you are actually pushing against the ideas of prevention and protection, thus energizing them. And you will find that more things may crop up that you are going to feel strong desires to prevent or protect yourselves from. You still have one foot in the game. And that perspective is valid. Now, it may not be one that you prefer, and you may be expanding beyond it. But as the chorus has stated many times, we don't get there by breaking apart the game and destroying it. We won't get there by destroying beliefs in prevention and protection. Rather, we'll get there by honoring them and respecting them as a valid perspective, as valid as any in the universe. Secondly, as the chorus has stated before, these things would be better understood potentially through the ideas of fluid dynamics than lines. So it's not like there's a straight line between our ideas of prevention and protection and our bodies and immune systems, although you could think of it that way. It is a valid perspective. But also, we are activating billions of beliefs per second. The combined fluid and dynamic and evolving and changing forces of those things are what create the experience of our body, our experience of this entire reality. So, as you awaken, what you are more apt to find is that as you become more and more conscious of things that you believe or have believed or have felt or do feel, you may find that representations of that expansion show themselves in many ways in your environment. For example, you're hearing all of this from the gal who just took NyQuil 3 days ago. So I'm not exactly a paragon of human invincibility yet. My immune system is still doing a whole lot of preventing and protecting. However, as I've begun to awaken to more of these particular beliefs lately with the chorus, I have noticed that my inspiration to prevent others from seeing me is diminishing. I do not feel as agitated to hide, to prevent others from knowing what I am, what I've experienced, or what I can do. Did I get a cold recently? Yeah. But do I feel a stronger sense of self now than I have before? One that feels, you might even say, a little more invincible, a little more impervious to other people's opinions and the risks of those things? Yeah. So, now that we've made the grand tour, I think we can finally come back to what the chorus was talking about today. The first time I recorded today's message, I was actually incredibly confused. As we talked about in episode 7 and how humans learn, we tend to break things apart in order to clarify our sense of understanding. And as the chorus described, this breaking apart and being more specific helps us to feel a certain degree of control because it fits the manifestations into our existing context. Now, if you listen to what the chorus said today, it almost sounded like they broke something apart. They said, you have this term called frequency. And this term alludes to all the things that are happening on wavelengths beyond your physical body, beyond your reality, and beyond your five senses that some of you have started to detect. And then they broke that concept apart. They said, essentially, we sense that this word may be starting to run out of runway, that you are expanding into more and different things, and it might be helpful for you to have more terms. So they said, one way to think of these energies as you expand into them is that there are energies of creation, and then there are energies of self, of you. Now, from a certain perspective, that could sound like they just broke stuff apart like humans do. Or from another perspective, are they adding to our understanding? Are they expanding the concept to hold more of the things that some of us may be starting to experience and that many more of us may join us in doing so? So, why make that distinction? Why tell us that now? What's so important about understanding that there are energies of creation and then there are also energies of self, energies of you individually? Well, we've been talking about the human body today. So let's take this message from that perspective. Is your body reflective of an energy of you or an energy of creation? At the start of this episode, you might have been coming a little more from the perspective that we often hold here in the game, which is that our bodies are us to some degree. And that though perhaps we have a soul, that there are reflections of who we are in our human forms. As we talked through the course's perspective about the embodiment of our beliefs, you might sense how your questioning ticks over to that level, to that perspective, which is, well, in order to answer the question about if my mind body instrument is an energy of me or of creation, I might need to know if my beliefs that I'm resonant with here are an energy of me or of creation. And the chorus would say, that is absolutely right. That is a fantastic question. Are all the beliefs that you hold you? Or is there something larger? Is there something more incredible, more invincible, more infinitely loving that is the you that is sort of passing through these frequencies as an incredible experience that was both intentional and purposeful? As we continue to awaken to beliefs as a species, we will each have more and more of this experience that the chorus is alluding to, where we will understand that there are experiences, beliefs that we held for perhaps just a period of time and that we identified with for a period of time that consumed us. We embodied them for a period of time until we reached a point where we started to awaken and recognize that they were there. And we said, why do I feel that way? Why am I so angry? Why do I want those things? Why do I feel like I can't have those things? What must I believe? And in those moments, we begin to see these structures that we created, that we resonated with, because you have started to expand beyond the structure itself. And the chorus is saying, what's expanding? What's that part of you? What is you beyond the identity, the limited identity that you held here for a period of time? That's how the chorus sees us. You know, when I used to have those conversations with them in the mirror, they did often tell me many of the things that we talked about today. You created it and you don't know what you look like, actually. But you know, eventually they came around to the way they ended their message today, which is from our vantage point, you are beautiful in a way that we don't yet see. They see our energetic selves, they see our consciousnesses, they see the dynamic beings who are resonating with these frequencies in abundant limitation, in a culmination of creation that is expanding everything for everyone who comes into contact with us. It's a type of beauty that supersedes all our belief systems and the mind body instrument that maybe we see today. And the extraordinary thing is that we are already partaking in that viewpoint that the chorus holds. We are already hearing the beginning of it. We are already starting to resonate on those frequencies, which means in the not too distant future, we will all see that beauty too. Bonus round. Okay, if you have to go, you can totally go. You got the episode, everything, you're good. If you have a few extra minutes, I think you might enjoy this. Okay, so we're going to do sort of a imaginary lightning round of sorts where I'm going to give you a few scenarios based on everything we just talked about in this episode. And then I'm going to fire off some questions to challenge sort of this expanding viewpoint, you could say. Press on it just a little bit more because I think you're there. I think you can do it. Okay, ready? I want you to imagine that you and I are standing outside at a park on a big grassy field. Sunny day, blue skies. You and I are just there hanging out. And then we see a UFO slowly drop down out of the sky above us, silent as a stone, just and then stops a few feet above the ground in front of us. And then the door opens and out walks, let's say, one of those gray aliens, something that's super common now in our group consensus. You know, the classic alien shape that's on all the stickers with the big black eyes. So one of those aliens walks down this ramp and stops at the end of it. And he opens his mouth to speak. And then I say, hang on, buddy, hang on. Not yet. Don't say anything just yet. We got to talk about something for just a sec. And I turn to you and I say, what does he believe? What does he, she, that alien believe? And you look at me and you say, Katie, an alien spaceship just landed in front of us. And you expect me to know what this being believes? And I say, yeah, I do. We just talked about this. Okay. Your senses, even on the wavelengths of light, are still perceiving resonance with frequencies, which in our dimension builds beliefs. So, based on how our friend here looks, what would you say he believes? And then you're kind of like, this is everything we're taught not to do. We're not supposed to judge people by how they look. And I go, I know. I get that. Okay. But just for the purposes of sort of like rounding out what we've talked about in this episode. And you go, okay, fine. Well, I don't know. He has a giant spaceship, so he's probably more technologically advanced than we are. I say, okay, maybe. Maybe that's true. Okay. Now, how does he look? What does his format look like? You say, well, you're thinking about it for a minute. And then I say, does he have a head? And you say, yeah, actually, he does. It's pretty big. It's a big head. I mean, bigger than ours. Okay. Does he have eyes? Yeah, sure does. Does he have arms and legs? Yeah, that too. Kind of smaller than ours, but yeah, arms and legs. And I say, okay, so, do we have all of those things that we just listed? And you say, yeah, we do. I mean, his look different than ours, but I guess you could say he's humanoid and we're humanoid. And then I would say, great. So, how much of what we believe do you think he is also probably experiencing versions of? And you say, huh. I mean, based on that alone, probably a fair amount. And I say, like maybe prevention and protection. And you say, well, yeah, I mean, I would guess so. And I go, okay, cool. And then I shout over to the alien, hey, buddy, does your species feel like you need to protect yourselves from things? And he lifts his arm and gives us a big thumbs up. And I turn to you and I say, well, clearly he also believes in thumbs up because that just happened. And then I say, okay, what else? Is it possible that his species may also believe in finiteness like we do? Like, do you think maybe they die too? And you say, I mean, I guess that's possible. Like, we do believe that. I mean, we really believe in that. And so, if our form reflects that, maybe his form does too. I go, okay. And then I yell over to the spaceship, hey, buddy, does your species experience death? And then he nods and even gives us a big thumbs up. Okay, now as we're standing there next to the alien, descends an angel. Everything that classically in our folklore, our stories, our religions tells us. So, you know, just golden and glowing and wings and white flowing robes. We're not even going to mess with these interpretations. We're just going to take it straight out of the group consensus. There's an angel. Okay. So the alien is still, on his ramp at his spaceship, and the angel sort of lands in the grass next to the alien. And I say, oh, great. And I say, okay, look at the angel. What does the angel believe? And you go, Katie, you gotta be kidding. It's an angel. I mean, they're divine. They bring about miracles and I mean they're angels. And I go, okay, all right, cool. Let's pretend you didn't know any of that folklore for just a second. And all you had were what you could perceive of this being on the wavelengths of visible light. Now, our beliefs are clearly affecting how we perceive these beings because we believe certain things. And so they are coming across to us in a particular way because of what we believe. But also, at the broadest levels, at the most expanded levels, we're getting a sense of something, right? And you go, okay, yeah, sure. Okay, great. Does the angel have a head? Yeah, she does. Cool. Does the angel have legs? I mean, I don't know. Her robes are kind of all flowing around. She kind of does. I don't think she's standing on the grass in the same way we are. She's kind of just like floating there, like not exactly on the grass, but not exactly not on the grass. Okay, great. Okay. Okay, cool. So, do you think there's a possibility that that angel shares some of our general structures of belief? And you say, yeah, okay, that's possible. And then I say, hello, angel. She smiles. I say, do you and your kind have beliefs about protection? And she smiles a big smile and spreads her wings and gives us two big thumbs up. And then I turn to you and I say, is it possible that her kind maybe experiences the beliefs of protection differently than we do? And you say, well, yeah, I mean, I'd have to assume so. I mean, she does look different. And I say, exactly, she does. But does she look that different? And you think about it for a second. And you go, well, maybe, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, no, she doesn't. And yes, she does. And I go, okay, fine. All right. Let's take then one more example. And then I point to the space beside the angel on the other side of her. So you have alien, angel, empty space. And I say, what does that being believe? And you go, there's nothing there. Katie, that's empty space. There's nothing there. And I say, actually, there is. Now, on different frequencies, that being is completely perceptible, but that being is not perceptible on the wavelengths of visible light. We can't see it right now with our eyes. And I would say, so what do you think? How many of our beliefs overlap with that being? And you would say, well, I don't know. I can't see if it has a head or arms or anything like that. And then I say, okay, well, let me suggest that it doesn't. Let me suggest that there is nothing in our entire belief system, not in folklore, not in legend, not in stories that we imagine. There's nothing in our context that I could use to describe to you how this being might look on our wavelengths of visible light. Based on that, how many of our beliefs do you think that this being shares? And you might say, I don't think very many. I mean, it's not overlapping on our wavelengths of light. It's not overlapping in our form or our structure. I mean, it's not even overlapping enough that anything in our context could even describe it. And I say, exactly. And then I say, now let's go back to the alien. And I wave a thank you to the other being, and I wave a thank you to the angel, and she floats back up to heaven. And I go, let's go back to our friend here on his spaceship. I mean, compared to the being that you couldn't even see, doesn't this humanoid form feel kind of really familiar? Doesn't this alien, which is, so alien to us, feel, I don't know, kind of a lot like us when you start to compare everything and all the infinite types of being and existences out there? And you think, yeah, that's kind of an interesting way of seeing it. Then the alien kind of waves to us and we wave back and I say, thank you. He goes back up his ramp into his spaceship and takes back off. And you say, where did he go? And I was like, oh, he had other stuff to do. I don't know. He'll probably be back. And then I say to you, so do you feel like you're starting to get it? And you say, yeah, I think so. And then I say, I think you are too. And then as we're standing there, the cutest little dog runs over and is all wiggly and wagging and running around our feet and looking for attention. And I say, hey, look, he's got a head. Thanks so much for listening. We hope you found these messages to be helpful. May they accelerate you on your path wherever you'd like it to go. For more information, check out our website at katieandthechorus.com. There you will find show quotes, episode transcripts, details on our book, The Book of Human Awakening, as well as our newsletter sign up. Visit katieandthechorus.com. Thanks again. See you next time.